So I've talked about both Marvel and DC on this channel, so I'm sure people have realized that I'm pretty into superheroes. And the question that everyone who talks about superheroes has to answer is, which is better, Marvel or DC? And that's what we'll be discussing today. Marvel and DC are both involved in 4 forms of media that I'm interested in talking about now. Movies, TV shows, video games, and of course, comic books. When it comes to live-action movies, Marvel clearly takes the cake. They've been dominating the cinema scene of superheroes for about a decade now, and I think deservedly. Out of most comic book movie companies, Marvel seems to be by far the most willing to consistently adapt characters in ways that resemble their comic book counterparts. A big problem that I have with Fox, Sony, and DC movies are their notable divergences from comic book storylines and characters. Personally, I think the recent DC movies aren't bad, but Marvel just has too much going for it. In animated movies, the situation is quite different. DC has the better movies and more of them, but lately their movies have been dropping in quality. It's a shame because my boy Damien takes center stage in most of these movies, but the point still goes to DC here. This is a case of Marvel not being all that bad from what I've seen, but DC films like Under the Red Hood and Year One just blow it out of the water. It's pretty much a familiar story when it comes to TV shows, in my opinion. The Marvel Netflix shows are the best live-action superhero shows probably ever, and the DC shows have always been a little underwhelming. Daredevil vs. Arrow is just no comparison. But then in animation, DC has the upper hand. I mean, Young Justice is just a masterpiece. The only thing Marvel has to compete with it is Spectacular Spider-Man, which is a great show, but DC also has Teen Titans, so the scales are a bit tilted in DC's favor here. Video games go pretty decidedly to DC. To be perfectly honest, I've played a lot of Marvel games in my day, and most of them are pretty mediocre. I mean, everyone has fond memories of Spider-Man 2, but I've noticed that whenever something is adapted into being a video game, it's usually done pretty half-heartedly. But I do think the Arkham games are pretty good, both as a video game series and as an actual Batman story. They give you a pretty good insight into many of the staple characters of the Batman mythos, which shows that the people working on it really cared about the characters. I haven't played a Marvel game with writing as notable as what I've seen from the Arkham games yet, so I'll give the edge to DC for this category. Finally, we've made it to the most important category, the actual comics themselves. Now, for a while, I'd have given this one to Marvel. For a while, all of the most interesting stories that I had read between the two companies had been from Marvel Comics. But now I've read enough bad and good stories from both companies to know that it all depends on what you're looking for. I will say that personally, I've been more interested in DC Comics lately. I recently revealed on this channel that Batman is my favorite fictional character, so stories surrounding him and the characters close to him have been my priority lately. And I have to say, of the most recent DC and Marvel comics I've read, I have to give the edge again to DC. They've been really good lately, and whether you're reading Doomsday Clock, or Batman Rebirth, or Detective Comics, or Super Sons, you're in for a good time. So, to recap, Marvel got the points for live-action movies and live-action shows, while DC got the points for animated movies, animated shows, video games, and current comic lines. Ultimately, all of these decisions were made on strictly subjective criteria, so if you want to check out any of the forms of media we've discussed here today, feel free to ask for a suggestion in the comments. I'll hook you guys up.